EA Sports. It's in the game.
What's up, NCAA Football 10 fans? Eric Gray back for another online dynasty tip. Today, we focus on starting your recruiting in an online dynasty. Now, before every season, you'll be taken to your preseason schedule. The most important part of this is preseason recruiting. Once on the main screen, you'll see the recruit plan in the top left corner. This is a very valuable tool if you are changing your offense or defensive style, or if you sim a lot through recruiting. I'm playing with Texas, keeping the same offense, same defense, so I've turned everything off and I move right on. Once back on the main recruiting screen, there are a few ways to set up your recruiting board. Number 1, you can search for the type of player you want. Number 2, under all prospects, you can go through every recruit by using hundreds of ways to categorize. And lastly, you can search via the Russell Top 100. Whatever way you choose to go about it, when you select your recruits, they'll be added to your recruit board that you find here. Like it says, this holds a max of 35 players. Also note, you must know your roster very well when starting preseason recruiting. That will help you pinpoint your needs more accurately. Also, you can press Y at any time, and a screen will be brought up that will show you your needs on offensive and the defensive side of the ball. Now that you know where everything is, I'll walk you through how I set up my recruiting board. First off, preseason recruiting is as important as recruiting in the season. A wise man once said, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Wow, that's deep. Okay, back to the video game world. I always search by all prospects. Always. At the top, you can use the X button to categorize by each of these columns you see. The first thing I do when I get to a new class is go categorize by speed. You can't teach speed, buddy. I start with overall. Then I break it down. I categorize by speed at these positions: halfback, wide receiver, defensive end, and linebacker. But also keep in mind, speed is something I will continually check as I move through my board. Let's say I'm not in the top 10 on interest with any of the Blazers in this class, but no other human opponent is either. I might add them to my board. After speed, I go over and categorize by what top-tier recruits have the most interest in my school. Also, you should note at this point, I always search by position by using the left or right trigger. At quarterback, I look for throwing power, accuracy, and speed if it's there. To find out all the recruits' attributes, all you have to do is right stick in. At halfback, I look for speed and acceleration. Fullbacks, I don't spend much time on. Tight ends are usually wide receivers that I move in the offseason. True wide receivers, those are easy. It's speed, speed, and more speed. This year, there won't be as much speed as there was in 09, but if you can get your hands on an A or an A+ speed guy, that'll change your team for 3 to 4 years. Offensive line, don't spend much time going through their attributes. I go for the top 5 or 4-star players. Sometime, look at their size and height. Same thing for defensive tackles. But if I'm looking for a tiebreaker in attributes for defensive tackle or O-line, I look at their strength rating. At defensive end, it's a little different because I want a B- speed or better so I can have some threat to get speed sacks off the edge. If you find a B+ speed defensive end in a draft class, you sacrifice anything you can to get him. Linebackers, you want tackle first, speed second. Sometimes switching a safety with good tackle to linebacker can get you some serious speed in the middle of the field. Defensive backs, I want all well-rounded, but like everything else, speed is most important to me. I will go after a 4-star safety with A speed faster than I will a 5-star safety with B+ speed. Also, if you're not in the top 10 of interest for some stud recruit that you think is a must-have, it's a risk, but it can be done. Although sometimes you might spend 2 hours a week for 4 weeks and never get in their top 10. That's a lot of time you could spend elsewhere. A couple other things to keep in mind when adding players to your board. In an online dynasty, you don't want to get into too many battles with human opponents. You don't want to go after 5 of the best players and only get 1. The worst thing you can do in recruiting is waste time. Go after the 1 or 2 you must have, then focus on easier recruiting battles versus the CPU. That is a perfect segue to setting up your recruiting board. You can always go in and change your recruit from 20th on your list to 5th. This list you'll also be changing throughout the season. But in the preseason, I suggest you set this in the order of who you are most interested in. Lastly, I know it says you can have 35 recruits. I usually sit at about 15 to 20. I spend a lot of time in the preseason, so I know exactly what 15 to 20 I want. The last thing you must learn to be successful at recruiting: know when you're beat. Take them off your board. So here's the recap. Go after speed. Fill out your board for the season. Pick your battles versus human opponents and know when you're beat and get out. There are many strategies for recruiting. This is just one that I found very successful. Now it's your turn. Feel free to add your own recruiting tips in the comments below. Next up, we will master the art of the phone call to recruits. I'm Eric Gray, and we'll see you then.